Do you remember what Christmas felt like when you were an atheist versus
Yeah.
what it feels like now? And give us that distinction.
Yeah, I loved Christmas as an atheist. And the reason what's not to like?
Yeah.
People are friendlier, they give you gifts, there's parties, there's a lot of drinking back then, which
Yeah.
I was into, and so I loved it. What I didn't like is when some Christian would try to tell me it's about the birth of Jesus, then I would write it
Mm,
off. But what's not to like? And then one day I was a reporter at the Chicago Tribune in 1974, and I was assigned to write a 30-part series on the most destitute families of Chicago. And so I wrote a story about the Delgado family.
okay.
And it was published on Thanksgiving Day. And Perfecta Delgado was 60 years old. She had severe arthritis. She couldn't work. She was raising two grandchildren, 11 and 14. They had nothing. They were burned out of their tenement. They're living in this hovel. They had nothing, no rug on the floor, no bed, no pictures on the wall, no refrigerator, no food, no clothing except what they wore in their back. The two girls, get this, in the cold of Chicago, had one short sleeve dress each that they would always wear,
Wow.
and they had one thin gray sweater between them. And so one of them would wear the sweater halfway to school while her sister shivered next to her, and she'd take off the sweater and give it to her sister, and her sister would wear it the rest of the way. They were absolutely broke. They had nothing. And so I wrote an article about it as part of my series. And I did something. I put their address in the article on West Homer Street. I remember that in Chicago, hoping that maybe the Tribune readers would help them, you know? So on Christmas Eve, I'm working at the Tribune. Nothing's going on. No news is happening. So I decide I'm going to go back out and visit the Delgado family. So I drove out there, and the granddaughter opens the door, and it looks like their apartment is Macy's or
What?
and people had showered them. They had Christmas tree with unopened presents. They had a refrigerator. They had stocked food flowing from the cabinets. They had clothes in the closet was full of clothes. They had a bed. They had furniture. They had rugs. But here was the thing. You know what I had interrupted on Christmas Eve?
What?
The Delgados were boxing up much of their newfound wealth to give it away to
No,
their
they
neighbors.
weren't.
Yeah. And I said, and I had a translator because they didn't speak English. I said, "What are you doing? Why are you giving this away?" And they said, "Well, we cannot have much while our neighbors have nothing.
Oh my
This is
gosh.
what Jesus would want us to do."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, do you appreciate what these readers of the Tribune provide?" They said, "Oh, this was wonderful. This was a gift from God. We didn't deserve this. This was wonderful." But she said, "This is not God's greatest gift." She said, "No,
Mm,
no, no. That's tomorrow. That's Christmas. That is Jesus."
wow.
And, and what that struck me was here I was this atheist living a very immoral, narcissistic, self-absorbed, self-destructive life. And it was like I'm comparing myself to them. And here these people had nothing, but they loved God. They knew God would provide for them in some way, which he did. And they had such a spirit of love and grace in their little hovel, even when they had nothing. And here I had everything I needed materially, but my soul was as barren as their old apartment.
Wow.
And that really struck me that they were so touched by the love of God and the provision of God that they would give. I'd be selling the stuff if it were me,
Love that you didn't ask people. Like, you just gave them their address and like that people
Yeah,
just were moved by the Spirit probably and did it. That is so
yeah.
incredible. I was just recording an episode. I do prayer episodes for parents on Mondays, and I was talking about Rahab and praying that our kids would have a bold faith in action. And I was trying to delineate because I'm a doer. Like, I've done a kindness movement. Like, I love action.